crazy effing wild weekend. Let's break down the most noticeable thing that happened, and it's not Aaron Plessinger winning his first Supercross race. Unfortunately, it's getting shadowed by riders that finished 4th and 5th place. We've got Jett Lawrence, who's the superstar of the sport. We've got the veteran Jason Anderson. And look, Jett puts hands on Anderson first off track. This isn't on-track altercation. This is essentially considered off-track altercation. And how does Anderson respond? He responds by being a little bit more forceful, and we could assume the words being said here I can't say on YouTube without being demonetized. Let's break that down, and how did you get to that scenario? Because both riders ended up getting fined and penalized for it. Well, that's basically what the penalty is for, is both riders have a fine of the code of conduct violation. I have heard rumors that it is around $1,000, and Jett went on social media saying that he was in fact going to pay Jason's fine and give some of his fans some VIP experience. But they don't really have it broken down here as far as what the penalties would be for something like that. But we are assuming that it's just this $1,000, because it does say that not all potential violations are covered under the tables above. And so post-race penalties, it's a fine. So I'm fairly certain that we can say both of them got a $1,000 fine for this. However, let's break down why Jett was so angry at Jason Anderson. And it all started with trying to get around him. This is noticeable, though, because we had multiple riders have this issue in this section of the track coming across the start, as you had Sexton and Webb have an altercation here, and this is exactly where Ken Roczen lost the lead here too. So here, if we watch that, they rub. The pass is almost taken, but I could see Jason Anderson considering this as, hey, dude, you're trying to take the line from me, and you're putting me in a precarious situation, because that line might potentially be able to suck here. And Jett is relatively just using the race line here, because this is again what happened with Webb and Sexton. But in the heat of the moment, you could argue that Jason Anderson is going, this dude's moving completely over on me, he's cutting me off, and he's forcing me to make a mistake where they actually do touch. You can see it here. Jason Anderson hits Jett Lawrence's dirt bike, and ooh, it almost puts him over here. So at this point, your brain snaps and you're going, all right, this guy's wanting to potentially harm me. I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen. You see Jason look over, and what does he do here? He straight up brake checks. Brake check, a little bit of brake check, brake check, brake check. Then from that point on, you have Jett getting frustrated, going, hey, I need to be precarious around this rider, because he could potentially put me on my head. So if I'm going to pass him, I'm going to need to make it stick. And you can see that here in the last rhythm section, where he actually gives Jason the room, where he's like, oh, I'm not going to fight the line there, which is smart on Jett. And Jason eventually gives up the spot. You've got Jett looking for ways around Jason, because he's arguably the faster rider, which why he decided to put hands on Jason at the end, shouldn't really have happened, because he got around him and he made it stick, and he made a point when he got around him. Jason looks over here, goes, dang it. He's got the line he's set up here. He's going to take the line. And you could say that Jett could have passed him right here. He could have stayed in the rut and made the pass. But instead, he wanted to make a point, and this was the point that he made, was boom, I'm passing you. I'm faster than you. That's where it should have ended altogether. And so if we back up to the very beginning, this could have totally been avoidable, because Lawrence straight up stuffed Jason. And that was that. That was the end of it. And unfortunately, egos get the best of us, and Jett is arguably the fastest Supercross rider, so he wants people to get out of his way, right? You're the champ. You don't want to deal with this kind of stuff, but Jason is a veteran. Jason is a guy that has the speed to win if other people make mistakes, and so he's not going to just lay down. These guys are professionals. They get paid to race. They're going to fight hard for it. So do I agree with the penalty for both Jason and Jett? I do, And the reason why I do is because both riders put hands on each other. And that's something that shouldn't happen in the sport. Yes, it's entertaining, but yeah, you got to make something happen. And a $1,000 fine is absolutely nothing. It's basically just, hey, we saw that, is all that was. So if we go back to the original implication of what started the whole thing is right here. This line that caused so much tribulation throughout the night, we're going to have to look at the whole Sexton and Webb thing here, because those lines do come together. Jason wants to stay out of the real deep stuff, and so does Jett. Jett doesn't want to go through this line. He wants to take a much smoother line, and those lines come together. So there's a lot of talk out there that there were some team orders between AP and Sexton, who is off the shot right here that you can't see, trying to prevent Cooper Webb from catching him, because he was in fact catching him. But it's in fact the same area here where these lines come together. And that's where then Webb gets all mad and he ends up flipping off Sexton. But I don't think Sexton really had any ill intentions on that. However, you could argue that you are seeing the blue flag. Sexton could have just stayed out of the race line altogether and let Cooper by. But instead, you know that these lines somewhat come together. He could have stopped here, let him go, but he continued pushing on, and it just happens that they end up rubbing together. So I can honestly see both scenarios take place. However, you want to give the riders the benefit of the doubt. Cooper says that Sexton knew exactly what he was doing, and I'm assuming that Sexton is going to go, hey, the lines just came together. It's a small racing incident. So I want to know what you guys think below, because the lines do in fact come together. But again, you could argue that Sexton could have given up even the outside and basically come to a stop to let Cooper by. Now that we've established context, well, what happened to Ken Roczen when he crashed out in front? Well, ironically, the broadcast ends up going out pretty much right at the time you had to really pay attention to see what happened. But Ken Roczen, the rut is so deep, hence why riders started creating a different line. His foot ends up getting caught and taking him down. You can barely see it because of the broadcast cutting out, but he is in the main super deep rut where everyone wasn't going to, and that's why Sexton and both Jason Anderson were on the inside of this rut, and so it was just made them closer together, which caused the other two incidents. But speaking just on Ken Roczen's deal, is his foot dabs and it brings him down to where it kicks him right there. Bike is in the deep ruts, but all of his weight is off to the inside because that foot is dragging him down, and boom, he goes down. Here, we'll watch it again in real time, and I know the broadcast cuts out, but here, see if you can pick it up. Super unfortunate, because he would have been the guy to win another race on a Suzuki, and it would have been a bummer for AP. And I guess at that point, you almost need to make it, would that have been a even bigger story than AP winning, is having the Suzuki and Ken Roczen win again? And that potentially could have shadowed what happened between Jett and Jason, or the Jett and Jason thing would have just taken over completely, regardless of who won, whether it was this rider AP or Ken Roczen. And now this is intervening with my other video series of the technical lines. We can see Jett Lawrence passing 4 guys through the whoops. He's getting around Malcolm, Tomac, and Clayson because he's skimming them. And why did this happen? All the other riders did not want to go through this. Well, for one, on my live show, I talked about how the top of these are not near as muddy as the bottom. So for one, Jett is staying on top of the whoops, and it's just less slippery up there. But then what happens a few laps later? Well, Jett ends up actually crashing there. And yeah, it is much more slippery, but I believe the bike is what's given out on him, is because now he's gotten multiple laps underneath him, and the knobbies are no longer clean of dirt. You're talking from lap 1 to now lap 4.5. That sucker is a rolling mud ball at this point because this track was so sticky, and therefore that just made it to where he was basically having a slick tire on top of slick whoops, which ended up creating the error that made him go down. Just slips right off. But that's not to take away just the cojones of this rider being able to just WFO through an entire whoop section that's full of mud. Just the amount of faith this rider has in his equipment is astronomical. And that, my friends, is a great segue to press day, where Jett again showcases his ability to ride over the bike's ability, where you'll see here he goes for a double quad and ends up coming short on the quad. Could he have changed something up that minutely could have helped him out? Possibly, but it could have ended up with the same result as well. But the thing that I noticed about this was most guys in deep scenarios like this, you get more pop when you seat bounce rather than when you try to preload and just compress with your legs. Yes, is it faster to compress with your legs? Yes, because you don't get as much height. And if you get less height, well, now you're spending less time in the air, and therefore you'll get back on the ground faster, where you'll actually make contact and you'll be able to accelerate forward. You can't accelerate in the air. So I wonder if Jett would have right here decided to sit down and seat bounce this SOB to the moon. Could if he have made just the right amount of lift to just get him 2 feet farther and case it just briefly with the back end, not casing it with the front. Boom. And another thing that he did that was great, that saved him, is he didn't lift that front wheel high. We notice that here he goes. He's going to lower the bike just enough to get it level, because if you have this area where your front wheel is so high when you go to case these gnarly supercross jumps, well, now you're giving it up to the forces of inertia, where that back end and front end are going to slam and it's going to pitch you over and you're going to go for a ride. And he probably would have ended his night just there. But the way he impacted, boom, just showed his prowess of riding ability right there as well. Still gnarly get off, and it's something that didn't need to be executed because everyone knew the rain was coming, and so that line wouldn't have been attainable. However, pretty freaking cool that he in fact went for it. And right before we leave, I gotta say, if you guys have made it this far, hit that subscribe button and nail the notification icon along with that like button, because it helps the algorithm and it helps me out a bunch. And I really appreciate everyone that is continuing to follow this channel and watch it grow and be part of the community. I owe a lot to you guys. Thank you so much. Marchbanks, he got stolen from a win for the Club MX Yamaha by Jorgensen. And it was just simply he was following the race line, and Jorgensen wasn't getting out of the way. But Jorgensen makes a small mistake here where it looks like he almost brakes checks him, but his front end just gets out of the rut, and therefore he brakes real hard with that front brake, which is the proper technique to get that front wheel to drop back down into the rut so that you don't tip over and crash. And boom, there he goes. But then he gets hit from the rear by Marchbanks, and luckily Marchbanks is a heavier dude, and that doesn't take him down, because, man, we could have had another Jett and Jason Anderson scenario if Marchbanks would have crashed. You know, he would have been going straight up to Jorgensen to be like, let me grab your helmet here for, I need $1,000 fine. But till next time, guys, I sincerely appreciate it. Bra-da-da-da.